Kelsey Pal.
Yes.
And what's the brokerage again?
Keller Williams.
Keller Williams. Just Keller Williams straight up. There's no team or anything along those
No,
lines?
so I was on a team for 4 years, my first 4 years in the industry, and then I just went solo in January. So
Congrats.
It's just me. Thank you.
What made you decide to get away from the team and do the solo game?
A couple things. I think when I joined the team, it was a great starting point, a great place to learn and all of that. And then as I started to build my book of business and start to understand the process, just wanted a little bit more control on the way things like marketing was going and my own personal brand and stuff like that. So just decided to dive all in. I think also when you're on a team, you can kind of get complacent, I guess would be a good word.
Yeah.
None of the problems are really your problems. So you can just be like, oh, not my deal.
Right.
So I just wanted to kind of take the bull by the horns and do my own thing.
How's it working out?
It's been good. I mean, it's definitely stressful. Sometimes I feel like I'm a brand new agent, even though I've been licensed for 5 years.
Yeah.
Because there's just a lot of things to still learn as far as the business side of it and the branding and the, making sure I'm targeting the right things, making sure I'm spending money on the right things, and all of that side of it has been a little bit more stressful than I anticipated, but it's still, I'm still happy that I made the choice and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So.
Yeah, dive into that for the agent that right now is like, I'm on a team and I want to get off of this team because I'm going to make way more money doing it. So what's the good, the bad, and the ugly? Because again, this whole podcast is not only designed to showcase you and the things that you're doing, but it's also designed to, really get people who might be in the position that you were in a few years or months ago to kind of say, all right, I'm thinking about this. We're just trying to drop nuggets of knowledge,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. I think for the good, I guess, not that it's all about the dollars and cents, but better splits.
Right.
I definitely keep more of every paycheck, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
And that control of where to spend the money is nice. When I'm in control of marketing and I'm in control of if I'm using a transaction coordinator or not, I can actually shop that out, right? Instead of having to go by the team's rules.
Who do you use for your transaction coordinator?
Myself right now.
Okay. Because one of our favorite people is Amy Goldberg with Seamless Transactions. Have you ever connected with her?
Oh, gosh, the name sounds really familiar. And I wonder
She's
if
heavily invested in Keller Williams.
I kind of wonder if there was another deal where she was on the other side of it because it sounds
Probably.
very familiar.
Yeah, Seamless Transactions is fantastic. In fact, it's a shame that you're not going to be able to make it to our event next week.
I know.
Bold, right?
Yes, which you've taken.
I have been a part of Bold. You don't have to be a real estate agent. They will take your money.
Of course they will.
Yeah. But yeah, we're doing a training course, and Amy is one of the sponsors. She's always one of the sponsors. I so much adore her, and I have put a lot of agents onto her transaction coordinating, and every single one of the agents that signs on with her, as far as sign on with her, but you do deals, they never leave. Really? Oh, she's legit. I swear to God, I've got so many testimonials from other agents about her. You really, it's one of those situations where you really get what you pay for. She's not wildly more expensive, but from what I gather, she's a little more expensive than your $50 or $150 transactions or whatever.
I would be scared to spend that little.
Right. But they are top notch. And as a lender who has to deal with the transaction coordinator, they're on it and they're professional and they have seen a million transactions as far as the weird stuff. Because those, the easy ones are easy.
Yeah.
But we run into certain situations where there might be something that's a little one-off and they get shit done.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I think the key to being a great transaction coordinator is being ahead of the agent, because I just want somebody to take more off of my plate.
Sure.
Right?
I mean, they want to do the same thing. Yeah. I mean, they want to earn their money, and that's what they're really good about. So
anyways,
going back to you, getting out on your own, you have control of the marketing, you have control of whether or not you're going to use a transaction coordinator and how that works and everything. I would love to talk a little bit about the marketing, because I feel like right now in this particular market, one of the things, and this is why we're doing the Craig Proctor stuff, is because brokerages have identified that leads is all the rage, right? Agents are like, I'm the best agent. You put me in front of a client, I'm going to provide white glove service. I'm going to be the best agent ever. And truthfully, I believe you when they say that. But getting clients right now is a little more difficult than it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So what are you doing as far as the marketing and everything right now to get new business?
Yeah, to get the leads. So I mean, I have a little bit of a benefit that I've built a book of business over the last 5 years. So I started full time in 2020. So I started when the market was really great,
Right.
and was able to really build that database. So
You mentioned full time. What were you doing before?
I was a nurse for 10 years.
Okay.
So yeah, so I got my license in 2018, but just was kind of like dabbling, and then went full time in 2020.
What's the difference between dabbling and going full time as far as, because I do know agents that are like, I'm gonna dabble, and if it works, then I'm gonna really do it. Do you regret dabbling? Do you wish you would have gotten in sooner? Do you feel like you made a smooth transition between being a part-time agent to a full-time agent?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, like I'm not a person that's like, oh, everything happens for a reason, but like I don't really look backwards that often.
Okay.
I'm kind of a forward thinker.
Sure. No, I like it.
So,
No regrets?
no regrets. I think I wish that I had done a little bit more training and education early on, and maybe taken a little bit more ownership of actually being a solopreneur, even though I was on a team. Those things I wish I could change, because like I had mentioned before, like when I did leave the team, it just has felt like drinking from a fire hydrant. Like, oh my gosh, there's a lot that I didn't know, because the requirements on a team were a little bit different than being an individual agent. And it just was like, all of a sudden, I mean, that's part of the reason that I'm taking Bold, is because I'm like, I never did it. And I've been an agent for 5 years. And when I tell everybody in the Keller Williams ecosystem that I haven't taken Bold, they're like, what? How did you get initiated into this
Cult?
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
Pretty much. So yeah, no, I don't regret anything. But I think it was good to like get my feet wet, because I was also super against being in sales. So I was like, I had to go through a lot of that in my head of figuring out a way to be in sales that felt right. So I don't think I would have been able to do that if I had gone like full on in, if that makes sense.
I love that you just said that, because one of the things we talk about on this podcast quite a bit, especially in the last 2 years in the market, is the idea that, and I can say this with confidence, I know lots of real estate agents that don't think being a real estate agent is being in sales. And the agents that, 2 or 3 years ago that were like, oh, I just, my sphere of influence and all of this, I don't think that they were giving any credit to the market.
Yeah.
And they thought that like
that
the
was
reason
going to continue.
Right. Well, they thought that the reason that they were successful was just because of them and, their services as a real estate agent. And then once things got to what I would consider to be a little more normal,
Right.
where you had to start selling real estate. I've actually been in a real estate training for a team where I ultimately was saying, guys, this is you're going to need to get back to doing sales. Like this is a sales industry. I had a team lead pull me aside at the end of it and said, like, we're not doing sales. Like we are educating clients and, creating relationships. And I thought, y'all are going to fucking fail.
I know, it's so hard, because it is like I get both sides, because I feel like I try to focus on that more as well, about the educating and like trying to help people, because nobody wants a salesman or a saleswoman.
Sure.
Like, so
no one wants to be sold.
Yeah. So it is a tough thing to kind of justify in your head. But at the end of the day, we are in sales. And I've had to tell clients that, like, at the end of the day, I make money when you buy a house. Like, that's just the way it works.
Yeah. I had one of my mentors, his name's Bobby Hall. He's a financial advisor who has done so well for himself. And I'll never forget, he said something to me, gosh, this was probably like 15 years ago. And when he said it to me at the moment, I kind of thought, oof, that sounds so grimy, but it's so true. And he said, the key to sales is manipulating emotion.
It's so true.
Right?
It does. It feels gross.
Right. So like, you're like, okay, so I'm no longer like selling this product. I'm manipulating emotion to get a client excited about an opportunity to purchase something.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is.
Oof.
And
I don't know about that one.
And when I heard it, I thought, oof, that sounds terrible. And the more I think about it, there's so much truth to it, because I do think, especially in real estate, and honestly, probably almost 90% of the things that we purchase are done with emotion.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, especially if it's your primary residency. Because we could
sure.
talk about investors and they're just looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit about the house.
Yeah.
They don't care about the countertops. They don't care about there's no memories that are going to be created in the home.
Right.
when you're selling a home to somebody who's actually going to live in it, like there really is a huge emotional investment that's associated with it. And if you can capitalize on that,
Yeah.
um, and the interesting part about it is like when you capitalize on it and you show an individual like what's associated with it emotionally, you're kind of no longer selling anything anymore. You're selling the emotion, and then the deal closes and they're thanking you for it.
Yeah. No, for sure. I would maybe alter that a little bit and say, instead of manipulating, I feel like,
I know I'm using bad words, but I hear what you're saying.
no, I feel that one of my strengths is being very emotionally intelligent and like intuitive. And
Right.
so maybe not manipulation in the sense of like figuring out how to get somebody to like something, but as soon as you see that this is sparking something in them, like I'm on that so quick. Like,
Yeah. Well, because what do you think the initial emotion is when someone's talking about purchasing a home? The initial emotion.
excitement.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's fear.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's like, I'm going to have to qualify with the mortgage lender. They're going to look at my finances. They're figuratively going to make me drop my financial
Well, that's because
pants.
you're a lender. That's why you think that.
Well, yeah, but like even
But
when
for
you're
me, they're coming to me after they looked at Zillow, and Zillow's great.
right.
Zillow's so fun.
Yeah, but you're part of the but you're part of the process when it's like, okay,
I thought
now
you were
we
gonna say
have
I'm part of the problem.
no, you're part of the process when they've identified a home now. Now they
Yeah.
have to have that harsh reality of like, okay, can we afford it? Right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then that's scary.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's when the manipulation of emotion comes into play, because if everybody just looked at a place to live as like a full-blown math problem, then everyone is an investor. And you know what it's like to deal with investors.
I have a few of them.
Right. And again, investors that love y'all, like there's a place for y'all, but at the end of the day, like if you're legitimately purchasing a home as your primary residency, like you do care about the layout of the property.
Yeah.
You do care about certain
for
things,
sure.
and
For sure.
there will be memories made. There will be Christmases had. There may even be children born and all of those things, and there's serious value in that.
Yeah.
That if we just look at the numbers, I mean, even school systems is a great example. How many people buy homes almost solely for the school system?
Quite a few. Yeah.
Right?
A large majority. Yeah.
You know, that was one of the things that I said about a year ago. I said, I'm so over talking about, buying homes for future wealth and the equity and like all of the money that's associated with it. I said, buy a home for your kids, buy a home for your dog.
Yeah. For sure.
For your dog, right? You got to get that fenced in backyard. Sadie's got to run around. What do you think the number one dog name is?
Is that what it is?
I don't know. When I think I just dated myself, because when I was a kid, I felt like every dog was Sadie, but now I see so many Charlies and.
Yeah.
Do you have a dog?
I do. His name's Hank.
Hank.
Yeah.
I like that.
And like,
what kind of dog is it?
He's a mutt, but he's like part Pyrenees because I did the DNA test, so extra.
So you are extra.
Yeah.
See, you.
Well, at the time, I didn't have real children, so it was definitely like we got to get the DNA test. He's part Pyrenees, part Chow Chow.
Oh boy.
And part American Staffordshire, so kind of like a pit.
Right.
He looks like Scooby Doo.
Okay.
And actually, he looks. Do you remember the?
How much does he weigh? I think it'd be a big dog.
He's 85 pounds.
Yeah. Okay. It's a good sized dog.
You remember the book series Hank the Cow Dog? Okay. I think it was a Texas phenomenon, but like
probably.
It's just this dog that looks exactly like my dog Hank, which I didn't realize at the time. But like he is now Hank the Cow Dog.
Well, it makes sense. They wrote a book about him. Sounds like
so
a good.
Funny.
Sounds like a good old
He's
boy.
real cute. Yeah.
I love the meme that says, there's people out there that don't let their dogs on their furniture. And it's like, I'd let my dog borrow my car if he could drive, right? And that's
that's like, you got to.
The whole reason that we got this office is because I can't work from home because my dog is so fucking needy.
Oh, really?
I swear to God.
And so you don't bring the dog in?
No. I mean, we bring her in when we have parties.
Yeah.
So I have a Doberman Pinscher.
Okay.
She's about 75 pounds, but 75-pound Doberman Pinschers, when you see Doberman Pinschers because they're so tall, people can never believe that she weighs what she weighs. They always are like, oh my God, the dog's got to be like 100 pounds.
Oh.
But they're lean,
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's super great, super obedient, but she can't stand if you are around and not paying attention to her. So
that's so funny.
She does this like nose whistle thing,
Uh-huh.
and it's really annoying. And so, yeah, I cannot work from home because if she knows I'm home, it's like, what are we doing?
That's hilarious.
Yeah, like
my dog is the opposite. He could care less.
She's the dog that, like, if I'm on my laptop, she'll put her whole head on the keyboard.
Which is cute for a second, and then you're like, okay.
It's like, I'm busy.
I gotta do stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I gotta buy you dog food. Like, but then she's also like this big chow hound. Do you know what a chow hound is?
Yeah.
Where like, so I have to really monitor her food. Like, I cannot leave food.
Eat all.
Oh, she'll eat an entire bag of dog food, throw it up, and then eat more.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah. So we have to monitor her food. And so the whole reason that I bring up the whole chow hound thing is because, like, I don't know how she knows, but she knows when it's like time to be fed.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't get fed, it's just like she's making noise, doing all the things. But what's interesting is that if we leave the house, like we got a camera on her and stuff. If no one's there, she's like, whatever.
She knows it doesn't work, so
she's just chilling. Like,
it's so funny.
Yeah, she is interesting. She's beautiful. I have such a good looking dog, and she's getting old.
Oh,
she's my 4th Doberman.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they don't live very long.
Do you just have like a family connection to that? Like, did you have one growing up?
No. So I when I was like 19, you know, after moving out of my parents' house, I was like, I'm gonna get a dog. Yeah. And I wanted to like, you know, I'm one of these people. I'm terrible. I didn't want to rescue. I wanted to get a purebred dog. And I thought I wanted to get a German Shepherd, but I was like, these dogs have so much hair. So I had all these like things that I wanted out of a dog, and I couldn't figure out what the best breed would be. I wanted a dog, meaning like I wanted like a bigger dog.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get a little dog.
Yeah.
I didn't want to deal with fur.
Right.
I wanted something that was obedient and trainable.
Right.
But I also, you know, I didn't want something that was going to be like crazy. And then the one that was really difficult is I didn't want something that drooled. Because there's a lot of dogs that check all those boxes, but then they drool a lot.
Yeah.
And I was like, gosh, what could I get? And one of the like family traditions that I had growing up is that we would always watch the Thanksgiving parade. And then after the Thanksgiving parade is the dog show every year. Right?
Yes.
And I remember I was 19, and it was one of these years where like the rest of the family was doing something, and I was basically alone for Thanksgiving, and I was watching the dog show by myself. And that year, the Doberman Pinscher won Best in Show. And I was like, I'm going to get a Doberman Pinscher. Like, that's it. I have found my breed, right? And we met a family, you know, breeder that was doing their thing, and they I met them, and they, you know, with Dobermans, because the thing about Dobermans is that one of the biggest, like, because I've become the Doberman guy over the years. Like, people will call me, like, I'm thinking about getting a Doberman, because again, I'm on my 4th one. And they're like, what do you think? And the thing that terrifies me when I talk to people who want to get a Doberman is when you say to me, I want to get a Doberman because I want to have like a good family dog that's also good for home protection. You can't do that. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, if you don't know Pony and you're my neighbor, you're like, I'm definitely not going into that house. But the truth is that if you come into my house, Pony's going to listen to whatever you tell her to do, right? Like, she is worthless as a guard dog. I actually think you could probably be, like, beating me in my face, and she wouldn't do – well, she wouldn't be like whatever. She would be nervous, but she knows that she is not supposed to do anything. You know, she just knows that because those dogs, if trained to be, like, guard dogs – that's all they're good for.
Right.
And they're one of the best. I mean, if I also wanted to have like a guard dog, you couldn't have a better one. I mean, they are fast. They're strong. They can bite the shit out of you. They're super trainable to be attack dogs. I mean, they were German police dogs for years.
Right.
So you really have to go one route or the other. You cannot have this family dog that also is going to guard the house. I know that I'm going to get a lot of shit in the comments for this and be like, oh yeah, my dog would never let my daughter blah 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 came in and bad guys and whatever. Like, you're playing with dynamite if you've got a guard dog that's a family dog. So I got my first one, and then the breeders called me like a year later, and they're like, we've had a second litter, and we cannot get rid of this blue Doberman.
Mm-hmm.
So Dobermans come in 4 colors: black, brown, they call it red, black, brown, fawn, which like is the color of a Weimaraner.
Okay.
And
I don't know
then,
if I've seen that one.
yeah, I had one. And then blue.
Okay.
And so black and brown or red are like the normal ones. And then off black is blue. They're like steel. Like it's not really like blue. It's not like the color of,
Yeah.
but they look blue. And when they're born as puppies, they have bright blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fawns are, like I said, like a Weimaraner, and they're off. That's like off red. And the problem with the blues is that they're so cute when they're puppies, but everybody knows that they lose their hair and they have a lot of skin issues.
Mm.
And so the Doberman community kind of is like, we don't really want that. Like I would never get another blue Doberman. And just for the record, his name was Major, and he was by far my favorite dog.
Cute.
But he lost his hair at like 2. He smelled all the time. He needed to take a bath like every other week, which washing like an 80-pound dog can sometimes be taxing. So at one point we had 2 dogs, and then my best friend, who literally lived next door, got his litter mate, which was the fawn. So he technically wasn't my dog, but we like watched him every day. And I feel like at one point we had 3 Dobermans at one time.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine what that would be like? 3 Dobermans. And one of the things I didn't account for, which breeders are going to like frown upon me, but like when you have 3 dogs that are all within like 2 years of each other, that are all technically litter mates, they fight
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And like I've broken up some vicious dog fights.
Yikes.
Yeah. But yeah, we had the 3, and sadly, my first one died of a hereditary liver disease, which is not uncommon for large breed dogs, and we had to put him down at 3.
Oof. That's
So
so
sad.
young.
I know, so sad. And then Major lived to be 10, and then the other one, Jameson, the fawn one, also had that hereditary liver disease. We had to put him down at 4.
Dang.
And again, like going through and doing the research, it's a very common thing. And then I was like, well, I need another dog. So then I did some research, and I wanted to get a super Doberman. So I started going and finding like very reputable breeders, right? And I found this breeder. So I'm originally from Ohio. I live in Cleveland. I found this very reputable national breeder that was breeding European Dobermans, which I like the European Doberman more than the American Doberman. They're a little smaller. They're a little sleeker, where like the American Dobermans are kind of like more jacked. So
That tracks.
yeah, right. Yeah, they're just like bigger, and they're like, from what I understand, so Dobermans technically are like 6 breeds. They're because a Doberman is technically a mutt. Did you know that?
I don't know. I feel like I'm on a Doberman podcast. Though.
You are. You are. So, a Doberman is a mutt. There was a guy named Louis Doberman before World War I that was a tax collector, and apparently he was kind of a psycho about dogs, and he was trying to create an Aryan breed almost.
Wow.
That tracks, right? Deutschland. So there's accounts of him having like hundreds of dogs that he would like try to breed to make this super breed. And in the 6 breeds that he ultimately kept like cross breeding was a Rottweiler. That's why they have the like spots like a Rottweiler.
Yeah.
A German short-haired pointer.
Okay.
A Weimaraner. A German Shepherd. A Great Dane. That's how they got the size. A Greyhound. That's why they're so lean. And then a Manchester Terrier, which is a very small dog. And Louis Doberman said he did that because the Manchester Terrier is known for its very sleek coat. So like the water just kind of beads off.
Interesting.
Yeah, right? And so I went to this super Doberman breeder, and I was like, I want one of your dogs.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, we do not sell our dog to anyone who hasn't had a Doberman before. So you need to show me photos that you've had Dobermans before. That's step 1. So I'm like, that's easy.
Yeah.
So I show all these photos. She's like, okay, you've passed the first test. The second test is there's a 6-page contract that I had to sign of all of these things. And I won't get into all of the like things on what it takes to get one of these dogs, but it was very it was pretty crazy, some of the things. And all of them resulted in like a $30,000 fine if I violated it.
Wow.
So like I was never allowed to breed her, even if it was like not with another Doberman. Obviously, no show papers, blah, blah, blah.
Huh.
So the day comes. So I bought her sight unseen in terms of like, I said, I only want a black Doberman. I don't want any other colors. And I wanted a male. She goes, well, you already have a male, so we won't give you another male because they fight. We'll only give you a female. So I was like, fuck, all right, fine, I'll take a female. But if there's no black female, then I'm not in. So I paid for the dog up front. Like, these dogs are baking in their mother, right? And sure enough, they ended up having a black female. So I was like, all right, sweet, Yahtzee. So I drive down to pick up this dog, and I'm like, well, I'd like to meet the parents. Like, there's the mother. I'm like, oh, she's so cool. I'm like, where's the dad? They're like, well, here's the thing. They're like, we imported this dog from Serbia.
Oh my God.
Because they're trying to avoid like crossbreeding for health reasons so that, you don't put your dog down at 3.
Yeah.
And we brought him in from Serbia for health reasons. He's like a super champion, best Doberman on the planet. But the person that we bought him from Serbia is like a Serbian like prince, basically. And had him as a full-blown attack dog.
Oh, my goodness.
There's only 2 people that he can interact with. But if you look out the window, he's right there. And this dog has a path beaten in this, like, backyard, probably like a 1/4 acre, where he has, like,
He just tracks. Like,
he just tracks this, like, fence, right?
Oh
and he lives outside.
Gosh.
His name was Elser. And I'm like, so I can't meet this dog? They're like, no chance. Like, if you try to interact with this dog, he will bite you. It's like, okay. So I saw him. He was a great-looking dog. So I'm like, well, I already paid for her. So I take her, and this dog, I named her Pony, is the most taxing Doberman that I've had out of all of the 4. I never believed in, nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
I never believed in I always believed that no matter what, you could train a human, an animal, no matter what.
Really?
Oh, I believe in nature now.
Yeah.
She is the most taxing Doberman that I have ever had. She never even met her father.
Yeah.
But, like, I have a track in my backyard.
That's so crazy, huh?
Yeah.
And she was probably the most expensive one, too.
She was. She's also lived the longest. So kudos
good.
to the breeder for, like, selecting and doing all of the things, because she just turned 10 on January 10th.
Nice.
And she's my baby. But, man.
Meanwhile, I got Hank at a trailer park.
Tell me about it.
It was just off of a Craigslist ad. I was like, I want a dog. I want to get a puppy. And saw them on Craigslist, and it looked like the commercials from, like, Sarah McLachlan, like, playing. Like, he's looking through. Yeah, exactly. He's, like, looking up at the fence, and I was like, oh, my God, I have to go get that dog. So we went and saw him, and he had this, like, big distended belly with, like, worms.
Oh, no.
And he had fleas all over him, and I was like, I do not want this dog.
And for $2 a day, you could have saved him.
But I need to take him to, like, help him.
Right.
So picked out fleas in the backyard with him for, like, 2 hours in September. It was, like, so hot, and just, like, picking them out with a comb. Got him into shape, and then he was a champ after that. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, they told me he was Pyrenees. I think they told me he was full Pyrenees, or no, maybe Pyrenees lab mix. And I was like, there's no way there's any lab in that dog.
Right.
And that's okay. Like, it's
but
fine.
He's a good boy.
Oh, he's super good. Yeah, he's super.
That's
good.
Yeah, that's good.
I've got young kids, and he's like super patient with them.
That's important.
And he just waits for their food scraps and just kind of loves to sleep. So.
Well, just to bring it back to real estate, because it's funny. So with all of these, what I do is we post the full podcast on YouTube, and we put it up, and we link it to the clips that we edit. And when I first started this podcast, I was like, I want to make like a really serious podcast with real estate. Like, I want people to come to watch the podcast and like gather information. And the clips that do the best, I swear to God, the dog one will do the best.
The Doberman.
I'm not joking. Like, people just, it's wild. And but again, going back to real estate and trying to keep it real estate related, one of the questions that I always ask, because this is your first episode,
correct,
and we have to have you on. I'm finally getting to the point where people are coming on for their second and their third episode.
Fun.
Yeah, those are the ones that do really well, but no one knows you, so we have to like start from the beginning. I always ask real estate agents, like, I know that you would, work with any buyer that you possibly could or seller.
Sure.
But do you find that you have a buyer and or seller that seems to, how do I put this, like gravitate, or that maybe you like working with more or anything like that? Like what's kind of your ideal client?
Yeah, I would say definitely first-time home buyers
Mhm.
seem to be my like
Why is that?
niche. I'm not sure, honestly. I'd have to think about that and figure
You
out
should.
the metrics of why. I think. I mean, what's your opinion? What you
Well,
see a lot of people, I'm sure, that have first-time home buyers that.
yeah, I mean, I can give you mine, right? And I can give you the why. And I encourage you to figure out the why. So my personal favorite, and every time I've said this like 10 times on this podcast, but it sounds creepy every time I say it, but I'll explain why. My favorite client is ideally a single woman under the age of 50. And the reason for it is because, number one, the thing that and is also a first-time home buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for it is because what I've identified is that, number one, women ask really good questions when it comes to real estate, and they don't come into the transaction like they know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that because when I have like an initial consultation with the buyer, a lot of times when I'm dealing with guys, especially if I'm dealing with guys that have already bought a home, they kind of like shut me down like I'm mansplaining, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of like, listen, guy, I know what's up. I've done my research. I've Googled everything. I get it. Like, just cut to the chase. What's the rates? Like, how are we going to get this done? And then usually about halfway through the transaction, something comes up and they're like, well, why are we just now finding out about this?
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, I tried to explain this. I tried to cover all of the things.
Tough. I don't like that either.
Right. So I would envision, you probably have a better experience with women.
Actually, what's funny is while you're saying that, I'm thinking, and I was chuckling because I'm like, I think a lot of my first-time home buyers have been single males under the age of 40.
Okay. So that's the first reason, is because of the whole like information part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Women are kind of like, they're willing to, admit like, I've never done this. I want help. I want you to help me walk through this. Like, explain to me potential pitfalls. Like, let's really work through the situation before we even get started. Where guys are kind of more like, I know what I'm doing. I did my research. Number two reason I enjoy working with, the woman who's buying the house on her own under the age of 50 is because one of the statistics that I actually looked up, and this isn't why I was doing it, but I identified this later on, is women see more value in investing in real estate than men.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out that men really enjoy investing in things like stocks and crypto and,
Whatever
crypto
sounds
bros.
fun,
Right.
Yeah.
Where women get more excited about investing their money into real estate. Not only do they feel like they're making an investment, but they also enjoy the aesthetics of a home. They enjoy design. They really look forward to like buying a home. So again, going back to the like kind of manipulating emotion, it's way easier to deal with somebody who's excited to buy a home
Mm-hmm.
as a home versus someone who's looking at it as like a straight up financial investment.
Right. Yeah.
And then the first time home buyer aspect kind of goes back to the first thing that I said, where it's not like, well, the first time because like I'll relate it to, I hire loan officers, right? I don't like dealing with loan officers that have worked at a company already, because all it takes is 2 or 3 weeks in, and I'm like, okay, here's how we're doing this. Here's what you do here. And they're like, well, at the company that I used to work for, it's like, well, do you work there anymore? Why don't you work?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're always relating something back to, and you know this better than anyone as a real estate agent, like this business is ever changing.
Right.
So when someone's like, well, when I bought a home, I didn't have to do this the first time.
Yeah.
It's
I've
like,
gotten that a lot.
yeah, well, it's
Especially
not
if it was in a different
1999.
state. I'm like, okay.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So to go back to your answer, you said that well, maybe not your ideal client, but the client that you seem to be dealing with is a single guy under 40.
It does seem like that for the first time home buyers scenario. Yeah.
For you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is interesting. I'm not
Do you
really
like it, or is it just the way it goes?
I really like first time home buyers. I do also, I would say like 50% would be that, and then maybe 50% of the first time home buyers are married couples.
Okay.
So.
And even when it's a married couple, because I'm glad you brought that up, because even when I think about it, I like married couples when I feel like the woman is
The one in control.
running the show. Yeah. Yeah. Like I like that way better.
Yes.
For all of the reasons that I just described,
Yeah.
you know. And even if it's not the guy, like I just know there's people cringing right now, like, oh yeah, there's that guy out there. It's like she's running the transaction. Right.
Yeah.
She might not be like, I don't know the dynamic of the household. So I just want to.
As long as they're both involved, I usually have a great interaction with that.
Do you feel that when you're doing purchases with couples that it is, again, not the household, but the transaction itself, do you feel that it's the guy who's kind of like the one that's taking point, or do you feel it's the girl?
I really think it depends on the dynamic. I don't think I could say one or the other,
No?
To be honest. I think it's a cultural thing too, and I think it's
That's a good point.
We
have a lot of Indian buyers right now in Austin.
In the Indian families that I've worked with, it's definitely more predominantly male.
Oh yeah.
There's been a couple where I was like very surprised that the wife was like dealing with everything, and those were like really fun transactions.
What about gay couples?
What about them?
How do you,
like, does one handle it more than the other?
No, I guess what I was saying is when I'm working on my my gay book of business in Austin, but I had a pretty big book of gay business up in Cleveland.
Oh, really?
And I absolutely love.
Yeah, I love that.
I love the gays, and I love gay real estate agents.
Me too.
Why do you love gay real estate agents?
They're just so fun.
They're fun?
Yeah, they're so fun.
Well, that's true.
They're also very honest. They're very honest.
I'm going to use the word direct. That is what I love about them. The gay real estate agents, like, my favorite thing about working with gay real estate agents is that they just don't fuck around. Like,
no, they don't.
It's like, okay, let's get this deal done. Like, here's what it is. They have control over their clients, and I mean that in a good way. They're not afraid to give like bad information. They're very business like oriented, and I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I wish most of my real estate agents were gay. I'm serious.
Most of your agents that we said?
Real estate agents.
Yeah.
Yeah, the real estate agents that I worked with.
In Keller Williams, they have the Rainbow Network, and so, you know, it's like the Pride Network, I guess, and I wanted to join, but I don't think I'm allowed to because I'm not gay.
Why?
You have to be gay.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
I was like, dang it. It's so much more fun there.
I
do have the diversity, equity, inclusion thing, like that training. I was a part of that community, but
we did. I did a big donation and went to Ignite the Fight. I've done it every year, and that's where I seem to connect with the majority of the gay community as far as real estate is concerned. And I meet so many great agents out of there, and I just feel like from a business standpoint, like, those are my people.
Yeah.
Those are my people. They really do get it. And I just, I don't know what it is. I mean, maybe the fact that like you had to come out and do something really, really hard in your life just like makes everything seem so much easier.
Adversity. Yeah.
Yeah. Like experiencing that cultural adversity makes telling a buyer that, like, you know, the $30,000 offer under asking is like, you're being an asshole.
Yeah,
you know, like where for some it's like, I don't want to tell them that. And it's just like I don't know. That's the only thing I can think. I can't admit, I don't know what else it would be.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with that.
But
I mean, in Keller Williams, I know, we've talked about this before, but I'm part of the Young Professionals Network, and so it's obviously nationwide, and that's a big part of it.
Is that KWYPN or whatever?
YP, yeah, just YP, yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, I love it. So yeah, I've got agents all across the country, and a lot of my besties are gay guys that I'm just like, I need advice. It's usually just like a pep talk, like,
and they give it to you.
You need to stop with that. Like, I just need that.
Yeah.
I need somebody to tell me that.
You need that direct, like, you know, come out of the closet with it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? Like, I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we are, today's April, like 18th.
Yeah.
And I just got the Fannie Mae predictions of interest rates because they basically came out because they do them quarterly.
Right.
And so we just, although, first quarter is technically over, March 31st, they came out with their predictions, and
it's not great, right?
I can't say I wasn't surprised, but So ultimately, not to like go into every number and be super boring, at the end of the day, Fannie Mae is predicting, these are just predictions, because for the record, Fannie Mae predicted last year that we would be at interest rates in the high 4% range right now. And currently, on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, we're at like 7.5.
Yeah.
So they're not the oracle.
Right.
But right now, they are predicting that we will not see interest rates under 6% all the way until 2026.
Okay.
How do you think that will affect you personally in the market, and how do you think that's going to affect the market in general?
Honestly, I'm not too worried about it.
Okay.
Like, I feel like people have started to normalize, like they've gotten used to the ratings being a little bit higher. They've gotten used to higher interest rates, and it just took a little bit of time for that COVID interest rate to be like a thing of the past.
Mellow out.
Yeah.
Right.
They're like, "Oh, remember that?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's not going to happen again." So,
Well,
I mean, I don't think it'll change too much. I do think more serious buyers are coming out. I think more serious sellers, obviously. So that, honestly, I think is a good thing because it's like everything is more motivating. And
I
but
couldn't
that's
agree
just
more.
the way I choose to look at it, because if I didn't, then just like a lot of other agents that have left the industry, it's like I can't just focus on, something being scary and like the sky is falling and all this stuff. Like I can't do that.
Yeah,
So.
I don't even think it's like you have to choose it. I mean, I personally would say that the amount of buyers that I'm dealing with in comparison to the last 2 years is definitely lower.
Mm-hmm.
But the quality of buyer in terms of seriousness that I'm dealing with is definitely better. So, I look at it like at the end of the day, all we want is a closing.
Right.
Right. So if I have to talk to 10 buyers to close one transaction versus maybe 7 buyers to close one transaction, granted, there's less buyers,
Right.
but like, is my bottom line going to be up?
Right.
And I'm seeing that this year.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, I'm seeing, and I've talked to a lot of agents about this. I just wanted to get your take on it, but I would rather talk to less people.
Oh, absolutely.
And close even the same amount of business, ideally more, of course,
Right.
than to talk to, like there's a difference between being busy and like just doing busy stuff.
The busy work.
Right.
Yeah.
And I felt like, I mean, especially in 2023 when everyone was like, oh, I'm going to wait for rates to go down. I'm going to wait for rates to go down. Well, at the time we were like, well, rates are probably going to go down, but then when they do, property values are going to go up. Like that was what we were saying all of 2023.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now we're in a position where it feels like this is it.
Yeah. Just get used to it, basically.
Maybe you don't have an answer for this because you haven't thought about it, but what percentage of buyers in the last 12 months that gave you the objection that they were waiting for rates to come down to buy, how many of those buyers do you feel like were using that as an excuse versus people who were legitimately going to pull the trigger if rates went down?
A very large majority.
Really?
Yeah, but I will say, like, I think
large majority using it as an excuse or okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Using it as an excuse. Did you think I was saying the other way around?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. No. I think you didn't make out if you were waiting for that.
Right.
But I will say, like, my pool of investor clients or clients that I had been working with that were saying they wanted to start investing has gone down. And I understand that if you want to stay local, like,
sure,
it's going to be tough to find something with a profit. So that side of my business has kind of not gone by the wayside, but just like, that's not what I'm focusing on right now because it's really tough to get an investment in Austin right now that turns a profit.
Yeah.
It has been for a while, but even now.
Do you ever talk about the concept with investors of the fact that when I look at investing in real estate, I look at it in two fronts. I look at it as mailbox money, meaning like it rent rolls.
I would love mailbox money.
Right, right.
That's my goal.
Well, hear me out. So you've got the mailbox money concept of the fact that you purchase a property and the amount of rent that you're receiving exceeds the mortgage that you currently have on
cash flow.
Right. And then you've got the concept of your house isn't mailbox moneying or rent rolling, but the appreciation is there. And so it's long-term, short-term.
Yeah.
And the reason that I think about this a lot is because originally being from Cleveland, Ohio is one of the areas in the country that never really appreciates very well.
But the cash flow is good.
It's always cash flow.
Yeah.
But the cash flow is weak, but it's there. and the appreciation is always meek.
Mm-hmm.
It never goes down.
Right.
It goes up a little bit,
Yeah.
but the instant cash flow is there, but the appreciation's not that good. And so being a part of like two markets like that, I look at like, what would I rather have?
Mm-hmm.
And I personally think, especially from a long term, it's obvious. Like, I'd rather have the appreciation. Like,
Right.
do I really need to rent roll right now when like I'm making debatably 8 to, I mean, at one point in Austin, we were seeing like 20 plus.
For appreciation. Yeah.
You know, would you rather make 20%
In the year. Yeah.
appreciation on like $500,000
Right.
or like $500 a month?
Yeah. Yeah. No, one of my absolute favorite clients, he bought 3 houses with me in the span of a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And it was right in the height of everything, and in particular neighborhood. And it was like, I'm targeting this neighborhood. He came in with what he wanted. He was not interested. He didn't really care if it cash flowed. He was more interested in just keeping it for an investment and long-term hold. And I think, he didn't give me the details, but from my conversations with him, this is his like college plan for his 3 kids. So when his kids get older, he's going to sell off a house. He's going to sell off a house. He's going to sell off a house. And
Yeah,
like,
I mean, there's definitely more. Yeah.
He's the easiest investor I've ever worked with. And it's like, yeah, I'll talk to you when I'm ready to sell. I'm like, okay.
It's perfect.
And I mean, I help him rent it out too, but like.
Well, and everybody obviously wants both, but
yeah.
I think about, I had a conversation with an investor, and it really like put me off, where he was all bummed out because he had like 3 properties and none of them were rent rolling because the county raised the taxes so tremendously. But they raised the taxes because, you know, the property values had increased so much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what do you want?
Right.
You know, he
you
wanted
can't
both.
Have both. Yeah. Yeah. No.
Excuse
sure.
me. So I think about that, and I think about investors that are like, I want to get into this, but it's got to make sense. And, you know, they're like, well, it doesn't rent roll. It's like, but we're in a 12% appreciation year over year. Like,
yeah. You're going to have to take a hit somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to also talk about, I've noticed, because everyone who comes on here, you know, I do all my research. I have noticed that your social media is like, you know, you're blowing up.
Oh.
Well, I mean, you're putting out a lot of content. You're putting out a lot of content, which is great. You're putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
I like it.
This makes me nervous.
Well, okay. Well, and
this is new for me. Social media, like being.
This is why I brought it up, because the reason that I do this podcast, the whole brainchild behind this podcast, was designed to get real estate agents on here with the intention of being able to create content for them. And the ideal real estate agent is the one that's like, oh, I don't want to be on camera. So what we do is we kind of come in and do like an open forum, like you're not staring straight into the camera.
Yeah.
And we are able to get social media content with just having a basic conversation, right? Get you a little champagne.
Yeah, I mean, what can go wrong?
Right. And so, you know, to see that you, because, you know, when I looked at the stuff that you weren't really doing much before, and you're doing a lot more than you were normally doing.
Yeah.
And I like it, and it's good. So kudos to you.
Appreciate that. I assume you would tell me otherwise if you actually.
I wouldn't have brought it up.
Okay, great.
So my question is, like, can you walk me through, you know, for the audience or other real estate agents that have hesitation to do stuff like that, like, what was that like? Like, was it scary? How did you come up with content? Like, you know, were you like nervous? Like, kind of go through the whole thing.
Sure. Is the audience mostly real estate agents? Like
my audience?
Yeah.
So I would say it's probably like 60 to 70% real estate agents, and then we round it out with like financial advisors,
sure.
You know, insurance
lenders
people,
okay.
lenders, business owners, stuff
like
that.
Yeah. So I realized that I needed to do more, because as much as I hate it, it is important if you're a real estate agent to have a social media presence, because if you are a client and you're like researching agents, it's one of the first things that you see is their presence. And it's just kind of like, in my mind, I view it kind of like as part of the resume, as part of like the bio. So it needs to have some content. If they're seeing stuff and it's like, you haven't posted in 3 months, it's just, I mean, to them, to a client, that might seem like you're not doing anything. To me as an agent, it makes me think that you might actually be really busy.
Right.
Because a lot of agents do post and it's smoke and mirrors and there's really no production to follow it.
Right.
So I mean, I really don't have like a huge system or anything like that, other than I have a really great virtual assistant that I hired in November, December. And I call her my CEO, because she will be like, I need these videos by this date, like,
oh, wow.
So she's taken a lot of that off of my plate to where all I have to do is just like provide the videos, provide the content, and she helps me immensely. She does the research. I've like helped with Instagram growth guides and stuff like that, and she does all the research on like what's trending, how to get new followers, things like that. So she does a whole lot of the lion's share of that.
Yeah, so she's the one that's kind of like putting together the content, if you will, and then you're like, this is what you need to do.
She literally gives me a list of like inspiration videos. We have a spreadsheet, and she's like, here are all the videos that I would like to do, and I'll go in and I'll look, and usually I'm like, yeah, that's cute, that's funny, that's educational. That one is way too aggressive. I would never do that. No, like take that one out.
Right.
One of them was like a Tupac rap, and I was like, I'm not doing that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so she'll send me like the inspiration, and then I fill out the void with that.
So you identified that you needed to do this.
Yes.
You ultimately hired a coach.
I needed leverage.
Right.
Yeah. There was no way I was gonna be able to do that on my own.
And so what was the process like? Like, what was the taking the plunge? Like, did you just say, fuck it, let's do it? Like, I'm going for it? Or, you know, like, did you have to pump yourself up? Like,
yeah. As far as like the actual video stuff?
Yeah.
Honestly, I know this is like so stupid or sounds silly, but I just literally just don't look at the responses. Like, I don't even think I'll look at any of your videos that you post because I don't want.
I don't look at any of my videos either. I edit them and I put them out, and that's it.
I'm a people pleaser, and I'm like working on it, so I cannot handle that. So I really truly don't live on social media anymore, and Anne has taken that off of my plate immensely because she's helping me with that. So I'll go on to like connect with my friends and make sure that I know what's going on.
But the physical aspect of getting in front of the camera, and physically doing it, how did you make that happen?
Is it really that big of a hurdle?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you right now that having people on this podcast, first and foremost, getting people on this podcast is way more taxing than you would think.
Okay.
Number two.
You did harass me for a while.
I know.
And I was like, I have
to harass people to get on here. So being in kind of that space where I'm like the coach.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, you have to do this. You gotta be on here.
Right.
So I am like on the forefront of the anxiety. Like I don't know, you know, I'm maybe speaking like out of just, what am I trying to say? I might be speaking out of like prejudging. I might be prejudging you.
Sure.
But like, you are not alone. You would be shocked at the amount of people that when they get on here, they're like, what are we doing? How's this is going to be? And like, this isn't even me putting you in front of a camera. So like this studio, we have a soundproof studio. I mean, we've got thousands of dollars of professional equipment in here because I have agents that come in here and they do like their reels and stuff.
Oh, cool.
Where they're like staring straight into the camera.
Yeah.
I've had people bring in teleprompters in here and all of that. And that to me is way more hardcore than what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if we cut right now and I stood you in that corner and I was like, okay, Kelsey, go ahead and like rip a couple reels. Like, that's way harder than you and I just like bullshitting while you're drinking champagne.
I mean, yeah, for sure.
Right? So I have identified the fear that a lot of people have in regards to social media. And I have personally dialed it down to two things. Number one, I think the main reason why people are fearful of getting on and doing the videos and doing the social media content is a big imposter syndrome thing. They're fearful that somebody's going to call them out and be like, that's a stupid comment that you made. I mean, I've already like talked about interest rates, predictions, like where a rate's going to go, everything. Like, I get reamed sometimes as far as like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or like you're trying to screw people over. I mean, we just talked about manipulating emotion. Like, I put things out there that are very attackable.
Right.
Right. And so I think a lot of it is imposter syndrome, that people are fearful that they're going to say something or do something that's going to come across as like, oh, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about.
The perception.
And then the other part, this is the part that I think is super interesting, is I think everybody who has a fear of doing something in the front of the camera and putting it on social media has a fear of doing it because deep down, they shit all over somebody in the past.
How funny.
That they were like, look at this
That's
idiot.
That's an interesting take.
I would never. So you know, like, it's as not to be like a psychologist here, but I think as human beings, we hate being wrong, right? And we're really good at like drawing a line in the sand and being like, that's stupid. I would never do that.
Yeah.
Look at how dumb he or she looks.
Right.
And I think that the people that have these fears of doing this need to look inward, because I'll be the first to admit, and it's a tough thing to admit, I've definitely like talked shit about people where I'm like,
for sure.
look at these fucking videos that this girl's doing.
So many of them are so
so
cringy.
ridiculous.
They're terrible.
And some of them are. But you know what? They're out there. They're doing it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think you just have to like focus on being vulnerable and like, okay, I got to do it anyways. Because honestly, if you don't, you're going to get left behind in some way. And so I just was like, all right. And also,
I think it's twice as hard when you internally talk shit about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's not to say that I'm not on social media scrolling through other agents that I know and saying, yeah, I know they haven't had any production, but like, but look at this, you know?
Right.
I mean, there's a way to filter it. I think that's a fine line of like, are you actually a great agent? Or sometimes, and that's where I struggle with doing more social media, is I don't want it to appear like that smoke and mirrors. Like, oh, they're so present
Imposter
on
syndrome.
social media that they probably aren't doing any business. Which is like the last thing I want. Yeah, that's like the last thing I want. So
how'd you do it? I mean, what was the talk that you had with yourself when you were like, I'm doing this?
I would say I had, and I would recommend getting a really good friend, like almost like an accountability partner that will take the first few videos for you. And just someone that you wouldn't mind like screwing up in front of, like somebody you feel comfortable with, but somebody that's also going to push you and be like, please do this one. Like, it's going to be good. Or please do this. Try it.
Like someone yelling at you to come on a podcast, like
Stop
over
it.
and over and over. Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. I'll put together great clips, I promise. No, I love that.
There's really no secret sauce. You just have to start.
You just got to do it.
You just have to start. It's just like realtors not wanting to lead generate. Like, you just have to do it. That's just the way it is. You can sit there and listen to a million different ways to get business and like go to all the workshops and all the classes. And if you don't actually do this stuff, it doesn't work. So
yeah. You know the Nike line, just do it?
I've never heard that.
You do. But did you watch that movie with Ben Affleck?
Yeah.
The whole Nike thing?
Yeah, about the shoe.
Yes.
How they got the shoe.
And they talked about where the just do it line came from.
Yeah. So I have a really, like, my toxic trait is that I don't remember plot lines for movies. I don't remember books. I don't remember shows. Okay. So you could literally make something up right now and I'd be like, oh my gosh, is that really what happened?
The guy that was in marketing, I don't know if it was a newspaper article or a book or whatever, but he was reading a story about a guy who was on death row. And they were like, do you have any last words?
And he said, just do it.
And he said, just do it. And this is the truth. You could look this up. Great. Look this up. And the guy on death row was like, just do it. And the guy at Nike was like, fuck yeah. Like,
I relate.
Just do it. Like, just do it.
It's so good.
Yeah. Can you imagine being on death row and just being like, you got any last words? Like, just do it.
I'd be like, where do we start?
That guy's a straight up street thug.
Yeah.
Badass. So.
Yeah, so honestly, that's the way to do it. I don't know. You just have to start.
Okay.
And know that the first few are maybe going to be not your favorite. And
so is it working?
It is. So I always, my viewpoint on social media is not so much that I think I'm going to have buyers or sellers flooding my DMs, like wanting to sell or buy with me, but it's more for the presence, like we talked about, and just knowing that like when I do have an interview, they're going to look me up. And then also because of the networks that I'm in with the referrals, like it's good to just show across your network that you are doing business. Yeah. So it's more about, and I don't want to say that like it's more about just the show, but it is just staying top of mind on the other agents that are across the country, or
it's retention.
Yeah. And even like the networking groups, like the BNIs and the things like that. Like, but I have noticed that the more I have picked up on my social media activity, the more people are commenting on it. Like not necessarily on the post, but I'll see like friends in real life and they'll be like, you're just crushing it. I'm like, it's just so crazy.
You know, it's one of the things that has come from this podcast that I didn't anticipate was going to be a thing. You know, because there were when I mapped this out, you know, there were a lot of things that worked that I thought was, there were a few that didn't, but the one thing that I didn't think was going to be a thing that actually has been really great, and this is why I really like having agents on, is because when I get a buyer now that's referred to me from an agent, I send 3 things. I send the application link for them to fill out an application. Okay. I send them my reviews so that they can see like reviews and things like that. And then I send the podcast that I do with the agent. And that is like been a game changer.
Really?
I swear to God. Because
with that particular agent that you
correct.
Did.
So like if you refer me a client, they're like, oh yeah, so Kelsey referred you, da 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 da. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm gonna send you this. I'm gonna send you so you see some reviews, and then Kelsey, I actually do a real estate podcast, and like I'm gonna send you over this podcast. And Kelsey and I were on one, and I send it over, and I don't even want to say this because maybe people will be onto it, but I can track if you view it, right?
Right.
And so like. A lot of them will view it, and they'll watch like the first 10 minutes of it.
That's awesome.
So then they get to see me. They see you because they know you. It shows validity because like we're not like – I know you've seen some of the podcasts that we do. I mean, they're very professionally done. The audio's legit. Like that was the one thing that I couldn't believe also when I did this. I thought it was all about the video. It's really about the audio. And yeah, they're like, okay, like they're not fucking around.
Yeah.
Like,
no, that's one of the things that I like to do actually. And the fact that you bring that up is interesting because I do have like a short, I think it's like a 3-minute video that I've put together that like talks about me and my process and where I came from, like more about me, just kind of like a general bio that I always send in my intro emails, like in case we haven't connected yet,
How many takes did it take to get that one down?
So that one was with a videographer, so it was more like conversation style. In fact, like the camera was more like this, and she was literally just like asking questions, and I was kind of being like, I don't like that answer. Let's try that again, and then.
So you've seen the video, right?
Together. Yeah.
Yeah. You've seen the video quite a few times, I would envision.
Yeah.
What's it go like?
Gosh, now you're like going to quiz me on it. I'm like, have I watched it that many times? Because I don't like watching myself talk.
Right.
I'm always like, ew, my hair looks terrible.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is, can you do it right now?
Can I do it right now?
Yeah.
No, I can't.
Where did you come from? How did it start? What's the story?
So yeah,
because I'm trying to capture the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Colorado, so I was born in San Antonio, but grew up in Colorado. Okay. And family of 4, like very idyllic, small ski town. Grew up doing all the sports, all the things, and went into nursing straight from high school because my dad is an anesthesiologist and my mom went back to nursing school when I was in school. She was actually a realtor before that, which is funny. So we like swapped.
Right.
So yeah, I went straight to nursing school out of high school because that was just like, that was what we talked about at the dinner table. We had those conversations, and the medical field seemed like something that I was good at. I was good at the sciences, and it's just what I knew. So, yeah, and then, worked as a nurse for 10 years, which dates me. And your face. Yes.
We're all getting old.
Not getting younger. Loved it in a lot of senses. I really fell in love with ER nursing. Actually got the opportunity to work in the ER in the small town that I grew up in for like 2 years. And that was probably, honestly, like the best 2 years as far as work goes.
Why?
It's really hard to quantify. I don't know if real estate agents have the same thing, but like ER nurses in particular, we're just like adrenaline junkies. Like, we just seek that adrenaline. And doing it in the place you grew up with a small group, a small town, I already knew the people because I grew up there and I had worked there a little bit in different fields. We just had a really great crew. Like, people who really truly cared, and the camaraderie was great, and we had a great like work-life balance outside of work. Now, granted, I definitely got burnt out at times, and I started picking up extra shifts and working a lot of overtime because the pay was so great on the overtime shifts. And then like, one thing led to another, and it's just like, okay, now I'm starting to get burnt out on this. ER nursing is not for the faint of heart. So yeah. Even in a small town.
I was with an ER nurse for 4 years.
Were you?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can be kind of crazy.
Yeah.
We're a little extra.
She would come home and cry a lot.
Yeah, I would come home and just like wouldn't be able to talk. Just,
Yeah, well, because most of the ER stuff that she was doing, I mean, she would go in at like 3 in the afternoon and then would come home at like 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And
It's a long shift.
yeah.
Somebody actually in one of my young professionals chats was like griping about working 12 hours. And I was like, I'm going to leave that one. Because that's the thing with real estate for me is like, and I always tell this to people, I'm like, it is so much better. Not to like say anything bad about nursing, but like it is on the worst day of real estate, it is so much easier than nursing.
You know, so her name's Nina Stefanini. God bless her. Wonderful lady. She thought that she couldn't handle the ER, and so she transferred to the NICU.
Oh my God.
And I felt like that was way worse.
I cried so much when I did my NICU rotation.
Yeah.
I cried so much.
And it was like, what are you thinking? Like, it was slower. It was easier, like, in terms of physically, but it was just.
No.
Yeah.
No, never.
And then she did hospice after that.
I actually really loved hospice.
Yeah, hospice was a lot easier on her. Gosh, I hope she sees this because I feel like.
Send it to her.
I might. I feel like at the time, I'm kind of like a cold-hearted bastard, you know? And I was always kind of there, but I'm more of like a, we'll power through this.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not like, oh, I understand. But I did, and I mean, I could never do that shit.
No.
And I could never do it.
Yeah, it started to get like, they were starting to prep me for, or prime me to like become a flight nurse from the ER is like the next step. Because like the adrenaline, you're like, your cortisol is like shot.
Right.
Because you've been in the ER for something, like, whatever. What's the next thing?
Yeah.
Let's go into a helicopter. That'll be better.
Sure.
In a ski mountain town where they have terrible weather.
Have you ever been in a helicopter?
I have not.
Me neither, and I've been told to not do so.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not going to do that.
I've
been inside of the flight, like the helicopters.
But not like in the air.
Not in the air, but
I
like
hear those
even
things will make you sick as a dog if you have any sort of.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know, like.
But the working space in that area,
well,
like I went and sat in
there's
there,
that too.
and I was like, oh no, I can't do that. I'm not even claustrophobic, but I can't do that. I would like to live to see another day.
Right. Yeah,
Anyways.
I can't imagine. But so carry on. Nursing, all of that, anesthesiologist, you were
my
working
dad.
in the ER.
Yeah, so then I mean, like life takes its turns, and got married, and then was still working as a nurse, but was pregnant with my first kid. And my husband at the time was a realtor. He had started with Keller Williams as well, and he was on the same team that I had joined. And he was like, hey, why don't you get a real estate license, because I'm getting busy and you can help me, you know, on the back end of things with paperwork and, you know, handle some of the admin stuff.
Sure.
And because of what we talked about earlier with like the sales stuff, I was like, all right, I'll do it. But like, I don't want anything to do with the sales part. I want nothing to do with the like pushing somebody to buy something, anything, because his form, and it's worked for him, but his form of real estate was cold calling all day long, door knocking, all the things that I was like, absolutely not. I'm not doing that.
Right.
So
Why?
Why?
Yeah, I mean, let's touch on that a little bit.
It's just not in my personality.
Why?
Like, so I'm like a high I, high
Yep.
D. I don't think that conveys well over the phone.
Okay.
I can sit at my desk in my office for a couple hours before I feel like I need to get out and like do something else.
I see.
I just can't.
So was it the selling or was it the like pounding the phone or both?
Honestly, the pounding the phone more, but then also just thinking of real estate as like pushing somebody into doing something.
Right.
I was like, that's not how I am. So really, truly, my first, 3 to 4 years of building my business has been like, my identity as a realtor has been low pressure, like reach out to me when you're ready, And that was a great time to do it because it's 2020, so people were reaching out.
Sure.
And now I've kind of had to like try to figure out a way to, alter that a little bit.
But I love having these conversations because here's the thing. I never run into somebody who's like, I love meeting people and pressuring them into something.
So true.
Right?
No, it's such a cheesy thing we say. We're like, we don't like sales.
Right. And so like the things that make good clips and like these, I'm so glad you brought this up because I would love to just like, mentally challenge this, I guess, because these clips do really well. So like, I never run into anybody who's like, when I grew up, I knew I wanted to be in high pressure sales. I knew that I wanted to like force somebody to do something that they didn't really want to do in the beginning.
Salesman, and I
Right.
was like, this is the best.
So that conversation never
No, I
happens,
know.
right? And everybody always says like, I never wanted to get into sales. I never wanted to really do this. And I'm not trying to tease you right now, but I'm trying to think of the dynamic behind it, kind of what we did with the whole social media video thing where, you know, where does it come from that people are like, obviously, let's face it, the reason that you don't want to do that is because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And now I'm talking to a woman who has done some really uncomfortable shit. You worked in the ER, right? I mean, you were an ER nurse. You almost were like in a helicopter ER, like picking people up off the side of a mountain, with potentially, you know, and even in the ER, I guarantee there's been somebody who's like looked around and been like, am I going to die?
Yeah.
That's like, someone's probably asked you that.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And, you know, not that that's like a sales situation by any means,
No.
but it's a super uncomfortable situation.
Right.
And like, how do you answer a question like that? And so you have been in these super uncomfortable situations, which I think most people who are like, I'm terrified of sales, I don't want to sell because I don't want to be in this uncomfortable situation where I'm going to basically have to tell somebody something they don't want to hear. Right. Like, well, how much is this going to cost? Are you trying to fuck me? Right? Because that's, I mean, in sales, that's like kind of the thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think about the whole sales dynamic and people who are like, I want to do it this way and I want to like help and blah, blah, blah. But then eventually, once they cut their teeth, you dabble in this like middle ground of coaching, educating, but at the same time, you also can't do that the whole time because you can get walked on.
Oh, yeah.
You can waste a ton of time.
For sure.
So what do you think it is? Not, and I'm asking you personally, but also asking you to like do the broad spectrum for people in general. What do you think it is that like, what do you think it is that kind of gets people to go, okay, like it is what it is. This is what we're doing, you know, because I would envision you and as an ER nurse, you had to train people, right? And how many people that you had to train were like, well, I just came here because I really want to help people. And, you know, I care a lot and blah, blah, blah. And you were like, look, bitch. I mean, I'm sure you had that conversation, right? Am I wrong?
ER nurses are so mean too.
Yeah. And you're like,
They're
look,
so mean.
bitch.
We're
like,
get with the program.
Get with the fucking
out.
program.
Yeah.
Right? So
I remember when I first started in the ER.
Tell me about it.
I said something to this senior nurse. I love her so much, Chris Tradiak. She was like my mentor. And she was nearing retirement age at that time when I started. And she's like, so tell me about your ER. Like, she's just peppering me with questions. Where's your experience? Where'd you start? Where'd you go? And then what about this? And I made the mistake of saying, yeah, and then I worked at this ER for like 1 to 2 years. She's like, well, was it 1 or was it 2? And I was like, oh, shit. So it's just, that's like quintessential ER nurse. Like, and she's not doing it to be a bitch. She's just like, do you have grit?
Yeah,
or
we
not?
don't have time. We don't
Do you
have time to
grit?
fuck around.
Yeah.
So how do we get as salespeople? And I mean this on a broad spectrum. And you can answer for yourself or you can just answer broad stroke. But like, how do we as people who get into a sales industry that initially we say the fluffy answer of like, I want to help and I want to guide people and I don't, you know, I really don't want to like push anyone to do anything, which is true, right? Because nobody comes in and is like, I'm going to teach you how to fucking buy a home, bitch. Like, you know, that's not what we're doing. But like, when do we get to this like crossroads of not allowing people to take control of the situation and waste a bunch of time?
Yeah.
But also like not just straight up pushing somebody into something that they don't want to do. Like, when does that happen? When do we go to the dark side? And how does it happen?
I think you either get burnt out enough of people running you ragged and you just have to for your own preservation. Or you get to a point where you can start saying no. And I don't really mean that in the way that it sounds, but like you're comfortable enough and you can say no easily and be like.
So with you having the experience that you have right now in real estate, and then coupling it with the experience that you have with ER nursing, what would you say to an agent that is brand new? Like you had your, what was the ER nurse's name?
Chris.
Chris?
Yeah.
What would your Chris conversation be to a new agent right now?
Gosh, that's a really good question.
Like, I'm a brand new agent, right? And I'm like, Kelsey, I want to be a realtor. I just got my license. I want to be, would you help me? So I really want to help people. I got into real estate because I love architecture and I love design and I want to sell homes because I think that it's like something that I just really think is great. I love the flexibility of the job too because, you know, I can like take my kids to school and I can do all of the things.
Flexibility.
Right. And I can do all of the things. And, you know, at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to sell anybody. Like, I'm going to educate. I'm going to teach people, like, what the ins and outs of real estate are. And then eventually, when they're ready to buy a home, I am going to advocate for them better than anybody. What's the Chris Tradiak pitch right now?
I would say then you're going to need to keep another job.
Okay. Why?
Because you're not going to make it anywhere if you're not willing to actually put the work in.
Okay. So
like,
go on.
I really feel like the first step and one of the most crucial things that I'll be completely transparent that I haven't been as good at is script practice.
Okay.
And role playing. Because if you're not out there having those conversations every single day, you're not going to be able to, you know, overcome those obstacles, overcome the objections. And the more that you do the script practice and the more that you like, you know, I mean, I can look at a script from, you know, Keller Williams or whoever and be like, that is trash. Like that does not sound like me. But I can speak it and reuse it a couple times and start putting my own interesting flair on it to where it does sound like me.
Yep.
That way, you're not going into these conversations sounding like a robot.
Sure.
You're not sounding like completely unauthentic, but like you've adapted it to yourself.
Did you think when you got into real estate, when you would look at the scripts and you would talk
that
about
I would be
role
doing
playing?
Script practice? No.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy that you brought that up. But what I was going, agreed. Did you think though that when you read this, did you ever have an attitude? And I think this is like an individual question, so you can answer it how I'll believe whatever you answer. Did you think like I see what they're doing over here and I hear what they're trying to get me to do, but like I'm gonna do it my own way?
Who being over here? Like
whoever it was that was kind of like the Chris. Saying like, this is the way that we do things. Here's how it's going to go. Did you hear those things and say, well, that's cool that you do it that way, but like, I'm going to do it my way? Or were you like, got it. I'm going to follow the instructions, you know, to the T because you seem like you know what you're doing.
Trying to think about this one. Actually, I feel it's twofold. Like the major part of it is, to be quite honest, I didn't have a whole lot of guidance. Okay. So there was nobody really like a Chris Tradiak in my life in real estate saying, this is what you need to do. Here's where you need to go. This is how you do it.
How'd that go?
It was.
Were you happy that that was a thing? Did you like figuring it out on your own?
I didn't know any different.
Do you wish you had a Chris Tradiak?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
Got
100%. I would have been way more. I mean, my production would be like probably 5x at this point because of that.
I'm always amazed to, and I think it's salespeople in general that are like, I can't tell you how many people that I have hired that I get this line all the time, like, that's not my thing.
Like if you're trying to tell somebody what you need to do.
That's my pet peeve. Like, that's not my thing.
I think for me, the other part of that where I'm saying like I didn't have much guidance, the other part of it would be if that was presented to me as the only option or like this is how you succeed in real estate, I would have backed out at that point. I didn't have the grit in the sales department area to be like, okay, let's do it. Like I do follow direction to a T where I would be like, I can't do that, so I'm going to get out of this because this isn't for me.
So you kind of had to.
So maybe it's better that I didn't have any guidance.
Right. So if I'm hearing you correctly, like you kind of had to stumble a little bit before you were like, all right, like I'm not going to be able to cut it if I just do it the way that I'm doing things. Maybe I should connect with some people who are successful and kind of like take their advice.
I mean, quite honestly, like, and the team I was on was great for starting as a new agent, and we had a lot of relocation leads, so they were very warm, almost hot leads. Like, you didn't have to do any converting, really. Right. You got a buyer lead. They were moving from California to Austin, and that was it. Like, I can do that all day long.
It's order taking.
It's, and honestly, I have said that recently to a friend of mine. Like, I truly feel like when I was on that team, I was more of just a buyer, almost like a transaction specialist.
Sure.
Not really focusing on the ins and outs
you're
of
literally
the actual
what
full package.
You're literally what the general public thinks a real estate agent is at that point. You just open doors and you're like, do you like it?
Yeah, and I mean, I did it better. Like, I had it down to a science with my relocation clients where I sent them, video tours and had it all, like, I had the process streamlined.
Sure.
But it really was just a very similar process after you're doing it so many times. So,
right.
I don't know where I was going with that. I have ADD.
No, we were talking about the fact that, having like a coach, basically a Chris Tradiak, who's going to come in and go, this is how we're doing things.
Yeah.
Versus you coming in and saying, okay, well, I'm going to do it my way.
Mm-hmm.
And, to your point, you said you didn't really have a lot of guidance in the beginning. And in hindsight, looking back on it, you wish you did. But you said if you did, you probably would have gotten out.
I may have quit. I'm honestly saying that. Yeah.
And I think that's like this is like my favorite part of this podcast right now because I truly believe that this is like, this is even deeper than sales. This is like life.
Yeah, no, there is a whole lot of like trauma and like all the
are
things
you
that
like
you
are
can get into.
not you, but I mean like to the audience, like, are you coachable?
Right.
That's like one of my favorite things. Like, are you coachable? And I can't get over the amount of people that. So here's a fun story. When I had already been in the business for 12 years. And I decided that I wanted to really get into purchase. The first 10 years of my career, I was doing refinance business, pounding phones, similar to like what you were talking about with your ex-husband, where he was like calling FSBOs, pounding phones. That was his business. And then I wanted to get more into the like personal, like face-to-face, doing purchase business. And I had no experience in it, but I knew everything about loans, right? So I knew how to do the loans. I just didn't know how to get business.
Yeah.
So I end up finding a company that is like super heavy in purchase business. They don't really do a lot of refinance business, and they were headquartered in Michigan. I lived in Cleveland. It's a 2-hour drive. So I drive up there with one of my business partners. We go up there, and we meet the owner of Gold Star Mortgage, Dan Milstein. And Dan Milstein is a Ukrainian immigrant. He's got a super thick accent. I fucking love him. He's great. He's like sales through and through, and he is a businessman. He's a millionaire. I mean, he's awesome. So this is my first time meeting him, and I'm meeting him with another guy that we're about to sign on to Gold Star with, and we sit down. At this time, we're both making well into 6 figures, so we're successful sales guys. Like, we think we're the shit, right? It's not like we're new. Both of us had 10 years in the business. So we sit down, and we tell him what we want to do, and he's like, tell me your business process. Tell me how you're going to get new business with real estate agents. I get like 3 minutes into my presentation. And with his thick accent, he goes, let me stop you right there. He goes, I don't want to offend you, but I just can't hear any more of this.
That means he's about to.
And he goes, you suck at your job. Right? And I think about this a lot because I was like, okay, like, teach me how to be better.
Yeah.
Right? He like Chris Tradiak me. Right?
Yeah.
And I feel like the guy that I was about to sign on with, he was kind of offended by it. Like, dude, we make good money.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, don't tell me I suck at my job.
Right.
And so we spent the rest of the day there. We saw like the campus and all the kind of things. And when we were leaving, it was like, are we going to sign on? Long story short, I ended up signing on with Gold Star. And then the other guy went and stayed with the company that we were currently with. And I can't get inside of his head per se, but I feel like he did not like that someone was like, you suck at your job.
Sure.
Right. And especially when he was totally qualified to like, it wasn't like we were new, right? And we were making money. Like, it wasn't like we were some new agents.
I can see that being offensive.
And I looked at it like, okay, well, if you're going to teach me a way to make even more money, like, I'm interested.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to say one's better than the other, but I think that it's tough. And again, to loop it all back to what you're describing, I find it interesting that you're willing, not interesting, I love that you're willing to admit that hypothetically, if you had a Chris Tradiak early on in your real estate career
Yeah.
that you might have quit, and the fact that you didn't kept you going, but then eventually you realized that you needed that.
Sure. I just do want to make the distinction, though. I wouldn't have quit because I wasn't coachable. I was very coachable.
It was
but
scared
I
you.
had very little confidence.
Correct.
As a human, as a person entering a different a different industry altogether, I had very little confidence.
Right. I'm not saying you're not coachable. Forgive me on that.
No, you're good.
I mean, along the lines of
I'm
like,
just
it would have
I'm
scared
one of the
you.
most- if you knew me, you'd be like, you need to stop taking so much input from other people. Like,
But it would have scared you.
oh, for sure.
And so I think about this from a managerial standpoint. I think about this from like anyone that, because again, I sit across this table on a regular basis with real estate agents that have been in the business for 10 years, agents that have been in the business for 20 years, agents that have been in the business for 2 years, and then there's my favorite agent, the agent that has been in the business for 10 years, 1 year, 10 times.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, I've been an agent for 10 years. I pull their production. I'm like, you close 5 transactions a year, every year,
Yeah.
year over year. And it's not intentional. It's not like, oh, it's, I'm retired. It's like, no, you can't figure out a way to make,
I hate that so much. And it's such an easy trap for realtors to fall into, especially in certain ecosystems. And like, I do really like KW. I will say that. Disclaimer. However, I do realize that there is a lot of distractions, even as a realtor in general. Like, people are always coming at me with education and workshops and conferences and summits and this and that and this webinar and blah, blah, blah. And you can really, and I've seen some of my friends do it, where they just spin their wheels going to all the classes, all the webinars, and then they never actually implement anything.
Well, yeah, because it validates that they're working.
Yeah, and
That's
I can fall into that trap too, because I have a very I have a thirst for knowledge, and I'm like, I want to gather all the information before I do something. Like, that's just my personality.
Right.
But I've had to literally be like, I have to cap it at this.
I feel like that's what this NAR lawsuit's doing.
Mm-hmm.
This NAR lawsuit is giving real estate agents an opportunity, the agents that don't really want to sell.
Yeah.
It's giving them an opportunity to educate themselves over something that really,
Like,
in my
overly,
opinion, doesn't really, I mean, I'm not saying it's
that it doesn't matter, but
right. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but
but it shouldn't affect you that much.
It should not, to where you think you need to spend
sure.
like an hour a day on a conference call learning about the fucking NAR lawsuit that hasn't even been like decided yet.
I'm so sick of talking about it.
Sorry I brought it up. So I want to look at one thing.
Okay.
Because I think, can you believe that we've been going for an hour and 15 minutes?
I was actually going to say, I need a time check.
No, like we can take off because I only have 10 minutes left on this SD card, and I don't want to lose the footage. They're usually 3 hours, but I had
3 hours.
It's 3 hours on the.
Oh, I thought you said your podcast. I was like, you did not tell me that.
No. So I've got 3 hours worth of footage on each card, and then I had a podcast today. So when I saw this one, I'm like, oh, we have an hour and 20 minutes, and that's more than enough time.
Right.
But look at us go.
Look at us go.
So, is there anything that you want to say to your fans,
my fans,
that we can get out there before we cut? Because I've only got 10 minutes worth of data.
Oh my gosh, I didn't come prepared with that.
Give us the elevator pitch.
Oh, Lord have mercy. I just did my BNI meeting this morning too, so I'm like fresh out of elevator pitches.
You've got one.
I would say that I am Kelsey Pal with Keller Williams Realty. I have been licensed for 5 years. Because I was a nurse for 10 years, I bring a lot of empathy to a transaction. White glove service, which I know is a buzzword.
Bang, bang.
And I'm just really passionate about real estate. Even, like I said, on the worst days, it's much better than slogging it as a nurse for 12 hours a day. And I always joke with my friends when they're like, this is such a terrible day. I'm like, but did anybody die? Like,
I love that. I love that.
So, I mean, I love what I do. I love Austin. I plan on being here for the long haul. And if anybody's interested in buying or selling, I would love to help them out.
Awesome. You killed it. I appreciate you coming on. We have to have you on again.
I would love that.
All right. Thanks.